Welcome back, better investors, to the BI Breakdown. And today I have back with me Hannah Kesler. Hannah, I appreciate you coming on. I know you've been having a lot going on your end of things, a lot of traveling as always, and a lot of fun too. I sometimes I get a little jealous. I'm watching. I'm like, she's at these concerts or whatever the case is. You got your friend with you, and of course you're doing some of the One America trips, and I see you with Jonah, Chris Noggle, so on and so forth. So it's on, way more excited for you and happy for you, obviously. And you're doing something at a young age and impacting a lot of people. So, like, how has that been? Um, Coming from we're Gen Z, right?
Yeah.
So we are the youngest generation, quote unquote, I guess, that's actually old enough to work and stuff like that. So being Gen Z, how is it working with people that's double your age and almost triple your age or whatever, and talking to them about money? Like, I think we see money differently than they do. So like, how has that been?
Yeah, no, and it's good to be here. So, yeah, no, I've been traveling all around the country, speaking on the infinite banking concept. Yeah, I definitely had a little bit of downtime too. So, I haven't gotten out in my van quite yet. So, I took a big long trip back in February, went all the way from Daytona Beach, Florida, where I live, all the way to California and back. So, it was about a 6 week trip. But here I've just been grinding out, talking on stages, just delivering the message of this infinite banking concept. So yeah, because in the audience there's a whole bunch of different ranges. I would say anywhere from like as young as like 14, 15 years old, all the way up to folks like in their 70s, right? So and the message is the same no matter how old you are. Everybody's got to process banking within their life. They got to go and they got to bank because you finance every single thing that you buy. Now, what I have been noticing here recently, and I've been thinking a lot about like on my own time, is that actually there's a lot of folks who are in that older generation that is needing people like us. Because if you think about it, most of those baby boomers, they're kind of transitioning now. They're getting into their retirement years. They are picking up the phone call and no longer being that financial advisor or IBC practitioner for some of these families. So I think a lot of people love working with people within our generation because we're going to be here for the long haul and taking care of them, and then also their next generation and hairs in line. So, so I think it's been really good. Definitely, there is some perspective. Like, I'll just be real. There's some people who will call me up and say, "Hey, Hannah, you've answered all my questions. This has been a great conversation, but I need to go and talk with Brent." Brent's my father. And I'm just like, well, why? If I answered all your questions, why do you need to go talk with Brent? So there are some folks that are out there who want to speak to people who are older. And so I think it's that experience that people think that, oh, you guys don't have that. But hey, y'all, I mean, you and I, Robert, I mean, we're out here, pardon my French, we're kicking ass. I do my own real estate investing. I've learned from all the failures of those previous generations. So I'm just not going to do that any longer. I'm just going to learn from their mistakes. And then that's what's made me so successful up to this point. But it's good. But too, I will even mention my last thought on it is that, you got to take into consideration where these people are at in life too. Because when I'm talking on the phone with somebody who's 60, 65 years old, our conversation is a little bit different than somebody who I'm talking to who's like 19, 20, right? So you always got to put yourself in those person's shoes of where they're at and meet them there at where they're at.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about it, while you were talking about it, is like you were saying, well, they want to go talk to somebody older or whatever the case is that with technology advancement and everything, um, we're like it or not, we are responsible for you now,
Mhm.
right? So like that's the thing about it with older generations of people, is that they are still dealing, and it's oddly enough, I just had the same exact thing. So, because over on my end, I didn't dive all the way into it, but I actually cranked up my own team of people and my own agency to handle things outside of IBC. And with that being said, is like I'm leading people who literally, quite literally, I have a guy, he's like 66 years old, and he questions everything I do. And
Yep.
then one day, I've every step of the way I've kind of like I've been right, so to speak. And so one day we were having a conversation around things, and it was like, it was more technologically advanced conversation, and so on and so forth. And he realized, he stepped back and he was like, I'm not fit to have this conversation. Like, I don't, I'm gonna have to trust that you know what you're talking about. And that's just the thing. Like the doctors, they're generation, they're millennials, they're Generation Z's, the new nurses, the new everybody. We're stepping into it. And I think that older generation people don't feel that we're ready for it. Because if you look across like social media and you look at the broader scope of people, a lot of us are immature, right? And we're and we're not we're looking to have a party, have a good time, and we're not caring about serious things. But I don't think they understand just how serious individuals like me and you are. That's also from these same generations. Like there's people like I'm a serial investor. And now, oddly enough, when I say this, I don't invest in real estate.
Mhm.
And so people like I would say my private lending or something like that. Yeah. Um, my definition of investing in real estate is something that you can hold in your hand, is tangible, and it comes from the ground, like land, a house, or something like that, right? Uh, so I'm big on precious metals, like gold and silver. That's my version of real estate that I understand, and it's highly liquid versus it. If I go and get a house or something, it's not liquid, and you have to know a lot more about the game. So that's just because it's something I'm familiar with, and that's what I know. But at the end of the day, if you're flipping houses or if you're renting houses or whatever the case is, it's the same as that concept. And I think that I think that they don't trust our expertise yet, because our generation hasn't shown a high level of concern when it comes to things like this. So they're actually surprised to see that you know as much as you do. And it's like, okay, I need to speak to whoever gave her this knowledge, right? Like, to make sure that they put a stamp of approval on this person. And the reality is that 9 times out of 10, we know something that they don't know. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I laugh because when I'm around Brent, he's married to his email.
Yeah.
And so, like, but I know all the time I'm thinking, like, Brent, there's probably an easier way for you to do what you're trying to do.
Hmm.
Like, like if they had to do certain things, you tell them to do something very simple on their phone, they're gonna spend the next 20 minutes trying to figure out how to do it,
Yep.
right? We'll do it quick, fast, and easy. And I think that's the great thing about it, is that we can take things that's very complex, and we can speed them up using technology. And more importantly, is like we have a great understanding. Like, I know my niece, she knows how to work an iPad 10 times faster than my grandparents.
Hmm.
Yet my grandparents were here for the creation of the iPad. Like, they were here for the whole entire time. She's only 3 years old, and she can zoom through this thing, get on YouTube, find the video she wants, all that. My grandma has to FaceTime me to do that same exact thing.
Yep.
So it's like it's oddly enough, even though they were here for this transition or whatever, it's like they kind of got left behind, and we're adapting to it at a much faster pace. So that's interesting. That people, even though you can, like you were saying, you can answer all their questions, they still like they're uneasy based on your age. Now, my next question would be, you know, is it because of your your gender as well? Like, is it because, like, do you notice a difference between, like, women are more trusting of you and your information versus men? Like, especially like older guys, they're like, this young girl here, she's pretty savvy and she's pretty sharp, but I don't trust a lot of money to her. So, hey, I need to talk to an older guy that I relate to or something like that, or even maybe even an older woman that I relate to better before I start putting any serious money into this. Do you think that's the case too, or no?
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And you know, you got to understand that everybody's got their own superpower too, to kind of just mention what you're talking about, where, okay, maybe these older generation folks, they have a different mindset than what we do over here. And there's some superpower to that versus us, where, all right, just specifically talking about technology or adapting to new ideas. It's a lot easier for us. It just goes back to the saying, it's hard to teach a old dog new tricks, you know. So and I do, and I think where the respect of like my clients come from is that they got to trust you. And I think the biggest building block with that trust is that, well, heck, I just talk to y'all about what I do in my own personal life. I'm just practicing what I'm preaching. And so thus by doing that, that has really strengthened that bond and the trust process between, you know, meeting somebody new. Because money is, you know, money's just a very big topic that everybody's got their own philosophies and different ideas of how they should handle their money, invest their money. And nobody's right or wrong, because I mean, that's really the beauty of living here in America. We all got the God-given right to do whatever we please.
For
But
now.
right? But you
Yeah.
know, I do. I think when it comes to like my gender, I've thought about that a lot, especially
Yeah.
like when it comes to meeting with like some folks who are just within my organization, right? I think that you based on your superpower, some folks will look at you in a certain light, and you just got to keep going and digging the ditch, getting your boots on the ground and saying, hey, I'm over here. I know what I'm doing and I'm going to show up. I don't care what you think of me, but I'm going to show up and I'm doing this because I know the truth and I know what I'm doing is working. But definitely, I mean, I'll just be real. Like when I go out and speak on stage, I don't wear a dress. I don't wear a dress and I don't wear a skirt because I don't want certain folks in the audience looking at me a certain way. So I show up, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but this is just my thought process. I'll show up in a pantsuit or my dark jeans and just a nice blouse rather than like a skirt or a dress, because I want to be viewed as equal to them. Because even just to go back through history, and we do not got to take it down that rabbit hole, but it really wasn't even that long ago when like women started just to have rights. I mean, just the right to vote, the right to go to work and different things. So we are growing and we're changing as a society in a very rapid pace, but there are still some kinks that are being worked out. I mean, just take it to like the employment world, W-2 world. If you go out there and you look at the different salaries of what men are making versus women, or the seniorities of different people within that organization, between like the fresh newbies that just show up, I mean, there's some differences there. So is it right or wrong? I don't know. I'm not here to say that judgment, but that's just my findings that I'm seeing.
That's interesting. Actually, you made a couple interesting points, and it kind of threw me for a loop because I had lined in my mind, I lined up what I wanted to say next, but then I was like, man, she done said a couple good things here. It's like, oh man, I don't know what I want to say. Okay, so one thing I would say is coming back to like the demographics, right? My superpower, right? You're looking at it, all right. So depending on my voice and of course my name, Robert Lee. So if depending on how I sound on the phone, you might very well think I'm not African American,
Mhm.
right? And but if my picture shows up or whatever the case is, it's a completely different conversation. And I think that that helps me. It's my superpower, and sometimes it's my kryptonite. It just depends on the scenario, and it does add a layer of either, you know, suspicion or credibility, just depending on the scenario. So when we walk into a room physically, like let's talk about how the in-person presentations, like what you're doing, and I've done some in-person presentations, and depending on the room, it does dictate the outcomes, right?
Mhm.
And they and then too, it's intimidating. It's intimidating as well because we are young and successful, and so when we're talking about certain things and we're talking about numbers or whatever the case is, they're thinking about, man, I'm not as successful as this person that's half my age, and they're sitting on here schooling me on this phone or in person or whatever. And it's kind of like, it kind of hurts to like, you know,
Insecure.
yeah, like it's like boom, boom, boom. In fact, it's hitting them in the face, right? And it's like, man, I don't want to discuss my finances because I don't want this person half my age to know I'm in a bad spot, right? And I think that also as well, with us being younger and having that experience that we have, they will automatically assume that some things you haven't done as well, like for an example, investing in the real estate or whatever the case is. So when you start to have these conversations, it kind of opens them up too. Sometimes it opens them up and they bring their guard down because it's like, oh wow, no, this person is very knowledgeable and they have a very good understanding of how the world works economically and so on and so forth. Now, you also took it down the road of saying, um, not too long ago, if society was different for women, and obviously, as you can imagine, if it was different for you just as a woman, it was a heck of a lot different for me. All
Yep.
right, whether you're a black man or a woman, that demographic was a heck of a lot different. I know when I come to the conferences, I am literally a needle in the haystack. Uh, a Gen Z black person at an insurance conference. How many more people have you seen like me at that conference? I'm
Yep.
literally the only person in the room. So it's different. And even for yourself, like a Gen Z woman, I think you're a year or 2 years younger than me. I mean, you're even a unicorn in that room too,
Hmm.
right? So we are making we are pioneering, blazing a trail, so to speak, and what we're doing. And I think it's something that's very interesting as well. Is you were saying like, well, I don't know if I can speak on whether or not whether or not it's right or wrong, right, or whatever the outcomes. One thing I find interesting is that as we move closer and closer to like an equal world, it seems as if these some of these outcomes are not actually what we want. Like and I don't, because you know me, you got me on social media, whatever. So you know how like how my brain works, right? And oddly enough, I feel like the more we try to move towards making everybody equal, everything fair, it's kind of making things unfair at the same time. Like
Yeah.
it's I'm not sure if some of these solutions that we have as a society actually I'm not sure if it's actually putting us inside of a better position
Like just
or
like a band-aid.
say what now?
It's just like a quick band-aid, just a quick fix,
Yeah,
right?
well, that and then too, I think a lot of what we're doing is we are actually creating a problem too. So like we're creating the bullet hole and then trying to slap the band-aid on top of it, right? So like we're dividing people, anti-Semitism, so on and so forth. We're dividing. We have way more division than what we had before. Like racism was probably the biggest divide that we had as a country. Now we're divided on so many different levels:
Yeah.
pro-life, uh, uh, pro-choice, um, you know, gender equality, all this stuff. Like we're so divided on so many different levels, and especially inside of an election year. Like Chris Nago asked me this, he was like, "Well, do you think we can have like civil war or whatever the case is? Like, where do you think we're going as a nation?" And I said, how can you have a civil war? That would mean that two sides have difference in opinion, but they agree on a common ground. America is so divided that's impossible. It would have to go like state for state. Like you move to Texas if you think this way, you move to California if you think that way. There's no way. We're divided on so many different things that it's literally impossible to have two major sides. You're gonna have like 15 different sides. Like we don't even have two major genders anymore. We got like 30 different,
Yeah.
depending on how you feeling today, you wake up and you can be a completely different person. Now, whether or not it's right or wrong or whatever, I'm not even gonna speak to that. It's just the fact that we don't even agree on that. So there's
Hmm.
no way that we could ever have like a civil war the way we did before. Those were two different sides where one side knew exactly what they were fighting for. The other side knew exactly what they were fighting for. And maybe there was some extra reasons in there. Because people always say slavery, and I don't think that a lot of young white men and women, men at this time, I don't think a lot of young white men stood up and said, "Let me go die to free slaves." It's not about that. It was about economics. And so that in the history books or whatever, it's like, oh, Lincoln freed the slaves, all this other stuff. If you do real studying into it, that's not the case. But obviously, as a young black male, or why wouldn't you want to fight on the side of the union or something like that? But that doesn't mean you didn't experience racism. It was just it looked different. One person was just racist, another person was racist and wanted to make you a slave. So it just looks different. But it's crazy that you brought up all these different points. And if you look at the world that we live in now, we're still fighting some of these same barriers, whether you're a woman, whether you're black, whether you're young, right? Like oddly enough, age is can get you discriminated against, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the case. But I guess I'll move on to the next thing here is when it comes to money, and I'm gonna deal with a little bit of your demographic with women.
Mhm.
You are do you think it's because societal pressures that women feel the need to have to make money to replace the need for having a man in their life? Do you think that's the case?
No, see now, and this is coming from a perspective where I'm single, no children. I got my two kitty cats who are my children.
I
But
got to say, you got some kids, they're just not human, so to speak. Yeah.
that's it. But so I think that I think you should just be self-sufficient on your own, right? And definitely just being single, being out there in the dating world and different things like that. I don't want to have to rely on anybody in any areas of my life, whether it be happiness or emotional support, financial support, to feel secure and whole with myself. So now this is coming from my perspective. I know there's a lot of other different perspectives out there too, but just for myself, I want to be able to stand on the ground with my own 2 feet and not have to rely on anybody else to support me in any area of my life. Now, I do follow closely to like Elena Cardone, Grant Cardone's wife. I love that family. I follow them,
Yeah.
everything that they're doing. I just love,
Yeah.
their mindsets and their different ideas that they're bringing together a community, no longer having to rely on big corporations, big banks, governments, and different things too. But, one thing Elena talks a lot about is that she's there to really support her husband. And you do need that. I guess because again, I'm single, I'm not in a relationship long term or anything, but I do understand her perspectives where her duty is to be that foundation so that Grant can go and build his empire for the family. And it just works in that, it's almost like how I picture almost like my mom and my dad.
Yeah.
In their family unit where, dad is the engine, but mom is the oil that goes into it. Without the oil, the engine's not going to be working. You need
Yeah.
somebody there, like even like the super glue to to support and keep things together. But, so I could really see both sides. I would say me right now, my main mission is just to support myself, be secure with my own being. And then from there, if I do find that other person who's also another whole bringing us together, and then that would really blossom into the support system, building the foundation, and then moving up from there. So I don't know, I guess I could really lean on both directions
I think
here,
so too. Yeah.
you
It's
know
it's crazy because you made some very, very great points. And I think that you do need to be, I think as an adult, you need to have a form of self-sufficiency. But I think because the economy changed, we went from like agricultural to industrial, you started seeing like, okay, we stopped putting the emphasis on, and this is through government controls as well. Like government controls farming, government controls a lot more of these private sector things where you can have you a big massive farm. Right now in America, you can't go start a 100-acre farm. You have to have like literally government licenses and so on and so forth before you can go sell the products or whatever the case is. And like you can't just say, hey, I'm going to go do 100 acres of potatoes and then go put them on the market or start selling these or whatever the case is. Everything is a lot more controlled, right? And they actually have incentives to make people not do big farming. So there's, I think back when we had this more agricultural mindset, I think we were even more self-sufficient, because if you look at it right now, we're relying on big corporations and big government for energy, food, clean water resources, like all the essentials of life, if you look at it. And I think that the skills of women, while they have more opportunities in the workplace, the skill level has significantly dropped. The majority of women do not know how to sew. The majority of women do not know how to garden. They couldn't even get a sunflower to come out the ground. They the majority of new age women don't know how to cook. um there's they're not as nurturing, I would say. And the ideology is not based on traditional home values or family. It's more so like, how can I live my life and have the most amount of fun before it, like, it all comes crashing down, right? Like, in their mind is like, whoa, when I have this baby and I gotta settle down. And it's kind of like they see the nuclear family or the traditional route as being like a hindrance versus a freedom or something that empowers them and gives them purpose. If you look at men, I can say the same exact thing. The majority of new age men, they have to call roadside assistance to change a tire. They
Hmm.
don't know how to, we don't have skills with our hands. Most of us only have what we know in our mind. We don't have a very good understanding of money, especially inside of America. Women, if I'm coming from a perspective of my race in particular, Black women in America make more money than Black men in America. Now, whether or not that's been systematically created, and whether or not that was an agenda or whatever the case is, that's something else to speak on. But the you know, if we look at it, you have a power struggle, I think, between the genders. And I, in my mind, I just think that that's something that is important. If I'm somebody in power, I think it's important for you guys to be clashing versus working together. And especially with inflation, I just don't see how, unless you're very, very, very good at what you do, like yourself, and you're making a lot of money, I don't really see how anybody's going to survive moving forward if you don't team up with somebody. Like, you might not even like somebody. There's going to be people that don't even want to be in a relationship anymore, but you paying half this rent, so I got to stay. Right. So there's going to be situations like that with inflation going up, whatever the case is. But what I will say is, we are in a different economy. Things are changing. I don't think we should put anybody in a box. If you want to be career oriented or you want to be more traditional, more family or whatever. But I do think we have to come back to seeing value in who we are. Like, even if I couldn't go out and conquer the world or whatever the case is, I can be a great father,
Yep.
right? And same thing for you or whatever the case is. So I think we have to bring it back to like more tradition, but at the same time too, we all have to get more educated to understand how we can be better with our finances. Because if we can take control of that, then it's a lot more other stuff that can't be dictated to us. Instead of somebody telling us how things should be, we can start deciding what they should be.
Yep. Yep. I think it also goes back to our upbringing. I just have a very, very hard conclusion to this, just for myself personally, is that our upbringing really shapes us into the person that we are going to be. Yes, there's going to be different life experiences that can shape your beliefs and different things as you progress through your life and as you age and mature. But upbringing, okay, so like, to take it back to what you commented on, is that the lack of knowledge around, yeah, sewing, changing a tire, putting oil in the car, cooking yourself a meal, how do these spices blend together, and different things like that. I mean, I think that really comes from the upbringing. And I do see why, to take it back to my example of Elena, why it's so important to be there, to be involved within that child's life, to teach them these life skills so that they can be a very profound person, and that they can support themselves and stand up on their own 2 feet. So I think upbringing has a lot to do with it. And to the agenda part, I mean, that's why, like, the public schooling here in America is just not the greatest, in my opinion. I mean, folks are leaving school and we don't even know how to write a damn check, right? So there's just a lot of lack of knowledge that we're not being taught. And I don't know if it comes from the place of, all right, let's talk about the government, and their agenda, or maybe it's just the people within the
Yeah.
schooling district. Hey, they don't care. They ain't getting paid enough from the government, the school board, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's just a lot of moving parts of why things are the way they are, that's got us here to this point now.
You said a mouthful for there. And then too, like, the gender roles, I never understood either though. Like I get it. Um, I might sound what's misogynistic, but honestly, I just don't think that in my mind, I don't think that I think we're in trouble because if I look at other nations, their military age men and how they mobilize and so on and so forth, women are kind of playing their role. Like, okay, let's go back to World War II. World War II, in large part, was won by women. And this is the first time you saw women start to take on the roles of men because a lot of men were out there dying, right? And they had to support the family and all this other stuff, right? World War II is the first time where you saw women step in and say, "Hey, we'll go into the factories and we'll make this stuff. We'll make the bombs or whatever the case is to keep the war going and help this effort." And what happened is a lot of women just didn't want to transition back. And then from there, you start to see this movement of we want to be free, we want to do this, we want to do that. And the downside to it is I think now women are starting to figure out how hard it is to be a man. Because now where you only had to adhere to what your husband would have told you. Now you got to go adhere to what that boss man is telling you. And now you got taxes up the yin yang and they're taxing the crap out of you. And now you got to deal with tax returns and all this other stuff. Like there's a whole entire scope of things outside of just, with great power comes great responsibility, right? But if I look at America, we're in trouble because we have a lot of very weak men, and our gender roles are all mixed up. Now I do think it's I think that we have to have them, but we have to be mindful of it. Like if you're a man and you can't cook just because I'm a man, I shouldn't have to cook. Well, that's crazy because you're gonna have a lot of nights eating at McDonald's or something. Because like if you unless you have somebody there to cook for you all the time, man, you're not gonna eat healthy at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's gonna mess with your health overall, your life expectancy, all kind of stuff. If if you're a woman and it's like, oh, I don't deal with finances, my husband does it. Well, God forbid something happened to your husband, you're up the creek without a paddle. I know Kim Kiyosaki, that's something that she's big on is empowering women inside of finances. And I don't think it's like you have to go out and conquer the world, but you do need to understand what's going on. Like if you can't pay a bill or whatever just because your husband died, I mean that's not a good thing, right? So I think that it's good for us to play our roles, but we do need to have self-sufficiency, just like you were saying. But I fear for our country, especially because it's kind of like we're losing ourselves. Men are not wanting to be men. Women are not necessarily wanting to be women. We want to enjoy the other side. Like we're kind of like crossed over.
Mm-hmm.
Like uh we have men that want to have the privilege of being a man, but not the responsibilities of being a man.
Oh,
And
100%.
we have women who want to enjoy the privilege of being a woman, and at the same time they want to be more like men and have the freedom and so on and so forth, but they don't want the responsibility though, right? So it's like I want to be free like a man. I want to be able to do what men can do, but I don't want to have the pressure of actually trying to be a man. And so it's interesting as a society. But if I had to say, one thing is that everybody needs to understand finances right now because it's impacting all of us. And I think that's what being your own bank and bringing it back to IBC, I think it takes you down this rabbit hole of, well, if this exists and this is real and it's true, why didn't we know about it? Or why is the world like the way it is? Why do we put all our money into banks and don't get paid interest or whatever? Or why do we have to lock our money up inside of this plan or this kind of account to even be able to make it? Why weren't we told that the value on our lives can be leveraged right now while we're alive? And it really, being your own bank will take you down a rabbit hole of financial education. I think everybody needs to have it because then we would all unite. And that's why, in my opinion, they have to divide genders. They have to divide us on so many other things. Like if you look at government right now, they're talking about stuff that has nothing to do with what the government needs to be doing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even though these things kind of matter, abortion has nothing to do with the government. I'm not gonna say I don't care about the scenario, but what I'm saying is we got inflation at double digits. People can't feed their family. So realistically, whether you're pro-life, if you're pro-life and we can't afford to feed the next generation of people, is how pro-life are you?
Yeah.
Well, like we care about stuff that, or if I'm pro-choice, oh well, you should be able to do what you want to do and make the decision you want to make. And and for the large part, I would agree. It's your body, your choice, whatever. And we walked a fine thin line with that during the lockdowns,
Mm-hmm.
where it was like, I think everybody witnessed where it was like your body, not your choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Even men, like, okay, if you don't take this experimental drug or whatever, you don't have your job. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if you're questioning it or not. And then later on, we saw that it was unconstitutional. A lot of people got their jobs back, whatever the case is. But nevertheless, is like, I think that even for the first time, men even realize, like, oh wow, this is what it's like to be a woman, where somebody can tell you, what you got to do with your with your body. I
Mm-hmm.
like we're going through a lot of different changes at a very fast pace. But like I said, if I'm somebody in control, I see it where it's like, there's a reason why I don't want you to understand money. There's a reason why I want you to go through school and learn a bunch of random stuff, but you don't learn how society works or how to survive in it.
Yeah.
When you get out there, you're lost. And then we're talking about a bunch of stuff that has absolutely nothing to do. Like, government is really supposed to be there to make sure that we have our liberty and our rights. And they kind of makes society function in different ways, like making sure that, hey, if me and Hannah do a contract with some money and Hannah wants to sue me because I didn't pay her, like there's contract laws in place and so on and so forth, right? But it's not, the government shouldn't be like, it shouldn't be like, hey, me and Hannah, we had a disagreement, we had a child together, we got to go sue the crap out of each other in court. You got to figure out how much child support I should pay, stuff like that. Like, we're the government has gotten off the hook on doing their job, especially when it comes to like maintaining the health of the country, because we're talking about a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with what government should even be focused on at all.
Yep.
And that's scary. I mean, it really is scary, because if we, take a look under the table or behind the curtain, I guess, is that it's like, oh wow, this thing is these people are still monitor the stuff that is important, but we don't care about it. Like, people keep talking about inflation. I see it all the time online. Inflation. They can't tell you the first thing about inflation. They just think inflation means prices going up.
Yep.
They don't know who to blame. They blame rich people. It's your fault. You're rich. It's your
Yep.
fault. You got money. It's your fault. Why did you make this inflation happen? It's because you have all that money. You don't want to share it. And then you get somebody like Joe Biden or something come on there. It's the rich people's fault. Joe Biden is a billionaire. His family's billion. I'm genuinely confused. I think that why Trump received so much hate, and I'm not trying to choose a side here, but it's because you knew how rich he was. The thing is, people just don't understand, really. Joe Biden is filthy rich. So if
Mm-hmm.
he's coming out and saying it's the big corporations, it's the rich people, why isn't he saying that he wants to increase taxes on himself? Why
Yep.
doesn't he just pay more taxes? Or why doesn't he take a cut in what he makes? He's not willing to do that. He's not talking about any of his finances. Like, Joe Biden hasn't paid taxes his whole entire life. He's
It's
been a
all
public.
control. I just think it's all control. And so, I go down like rabbit holes when I'm thinking about this, definitely like on like a Sunday morning when I'm just like watering my plants and gardening and stuff. But that's why I always come back to the conclusion. Like I do this full circle all the time when I get into those deep rooted issues that we do have here, is I say, well, I can only control what I can control, and I'm just going to focus on me and what I can control. Right.
Mhm. No, that's big, and that's so. I guess so. My question would be to you is, how important do you think it is right now? Because I think it's very important. I'm sure you can agree. But how important do you think it is right now that everybody, no matter the age, no matter the creed, gender, that everybody has a better understanding of finances?
Yeah, right. I think it is very, very important, specifically too, like you brought up, like, okay, the wife doesn't know about the money because the husband's taking care of the money. I literally had a phone call like that about 2 weeks ago. Somebody called me up and she says, "Hey, Hannah, I've been following your podcast show, and I think I need some help. I've been trying to talk with my husband about my money, and because we're retired right now, he's got me on this budget of what I can spend weekly. But if something happens to him, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to pay the bills. I don't know what investments he's got out there, or 401ks, pension plans, and different stuff. So, I mean, I think it's very, very important, just because I think it goes back to, you just need to be secure and be able to move forward no matter if you have somebody with you or not with you. So everybody, and it just kind of goes back to like even Nelson Nash's teachings. In one of his chapters, he talks about the arrival syndrome. Don't ever, 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 ever hit the arrival syndrome, because you might as well just be dead, because you think there is everything that there is to know on this planet, and there's nothing more to be learned. And so, hey, you basically have stopped growing. So I think it's very important, specifically money, because if you think about the money, all money is a means of exchange. We put so much glory and emphasis on money, but all it is just a tool and a resource to get me what I want, my time freedom back, and different things. But really, all money is that all we're going to do with it is we're just using it for the things that we're purchasing in life. But so many people, they get stressed out, right? If you really go and look at it, because my father was a chiropractor, right? And so the number one cause of death is heart disease. Well, okay, well, what's the reason of heart disease? It's stress. Well, what's the number one leading factor of stress? It's mostly money problems. So all of this kind of just tangles in together. And that's why I think it's just so important just to start having the conversations, bringing it around the dinner table, and stop making money such a taboo subject. I'm very, very big on that. So I think it's very important, my long-winded answer.
No, I think the answer was great. Actually, I'm happy that you touched on some of the things you touched on, and oddly enough, too, like I'll even talk to men. They're like, "I gotta go. Let me go talk to my wife about it." Man, your wife is a stay-at-home mom or something. I don't see how somebody who's not dealing with finances, unless she has some kind of financial background, right, or whatever. And I'm not saying that she doesn't deserve a say or whatever, as a family unit. But I'm saying is that's like me saying, I go to my doctor, and he gives me some bad news, and I'm like, man, well, let me go ask my mechanic about it. Let me get a second opinion from my mechanic. It's like, that's not their role. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
what do you think your wife is going to say when you come through the door and say, hey, Susie, I want to put in $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year into a whole life policy, and we're going to do this, and this. She's looking at you like you're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't understand it. She hasn't watched the video. She didn't go to the seminar. Um, and rightfully so, she's probably going to shoot you down on it, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, man, we trying to make the bills and stuff happen already. Now you're talking about taking large lump sums of money and moving it into a whole life policy. And I've never heard of insurance being used that way. And I mean, there's a whole list of things. So I think, like, oddly enough, is that just comes back to putting the emphasis on everybody needs to understand money. Everybody needs to know what's going on. And then two, I think the biggest issue we have is people don't understand the difference between currency and money. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I love gold and silver. Gold and silver is money. Currency is dollars. And that's why we have the stress that we have on the system itself and as individuals, is because when you get a dollar in your hand, that is the start of a journey. Now you got to get that thing moving, because if you don't, it's devaluing itself rapidly.
Yep.
Devalue. If you had money, like the gold and silver I've bought has maintained its value from the time I've ever had it. And it's actually increased in value because the dollar that it's denominated in has devalued. So gold
Mm-hmm.
and silver, actually, people have this mistake where it's like an investment and it goes up and down. It's not. It's kind of like insurance. It's protection. It doesn't actually fluctuate at all. The value of it is changing relative to what you use to purchase it. That's why the price of real estate. Land, I mean, you can look at a plot of land, it's the same exact land, it's looked the same way for 20, 30 years, whether it has a house on it or not. Or you could even look at homes that were built in the 1950s. A $25,000 home then is a $250,000 home now. That's 10x.
Mm-hmm.
Why? The home is actually depreciated. It's had to be. Some things might have been redone on it, whatever. But the land it sits on in the home itself has appreciated based on the devaluation of the dollars that you would use to buy that land or buy that house. That's why rich people buy assets, and more importantly, we borrow against them. That's what we're doing with our policy. We're taking lumps of money, turning into larger sums of money, and borrowing against it. Because if we did it any other way, the government, good old Joe, he wants to go to, I don't know. He said something outrageous. And on capital gains, I think he wanted to raise it like another 10 to 15% on capital gains. And that is going to, I think we're in for some very hard times, because what's going to do is it's going to crash the economy.
Yep.
I don't think and I don't know if this is purposeful, but I don't think people understand what these policies are going to do. When you make it to where investors have no incentive to invest, for one, they're going to take the money, they're going to go overseas, whatever the case is, and then you keep raising these taxes as well, right? But more importantly is that if just for the average investor, if I know that me investing into the stock market or whatever is no longer healthy at the way it was before, because I'm going to have to pay all these taxes, right? Well, I just stopped doing that. What happens when people stop putting money into a market?
Yep.
Goes
Crash.
down, crashes. Exactly. But at the same time, how many people have a 401k, a IRA, whatever, tied to that market?
Lost people.
Millions and millions of Americans. And the reality is millions and millions of Americans don't have a clue how 401k or IRA or something like a Roth account, whatever. They don't even have a clue how that actually works. So we
Yep.
are in for a doozy. Especially once this presidential election is over, which I think in my opinion, it's a presidential reality show, is what it is. This is I mean, because it's not really an election in my opinion, because your popular vote doesn't matter. And I think if you want to see that, you can look at Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and oddly enough, at the time, I was completely different mindset of how I am now. Um, and it's crazy how having money and having resources and knowledge changes your perspective on things. But at the time, I voted for Hillary Clinton. I thought that she would have been a better candidate. She's been in office longer, whatever the case is. And well, in terms of politics or whatever. And I mean, I didn't know no better. Now I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I voted for Hillary Clinton. This is the first person I've ever voted for in my life. What was I thinking? Right. But that's today. In hindsight, I just didn't know. And so, but looking at it, she beat Donald Trump in that election by like 1 million+ votes. I mean, it wasn't even close in terms of the majority vote. But what it showed is the majority of you can think this way. That doesn't mean that that's the direction we're going to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, and that's the scariest thing to me about it, is like, that's why I said it's the reality show. It's the illusion of choice, so that you don't feel like I got King George and the Queen Elizabeth or whatever, right? It's like we can't make it seem as if they don't have a choice. So we got to put something in place to give them that illusion of choice, to make them calm everybody down. It's gonna be okay. And then we got the Congress, who they never really do anything for us, and the Supreme Court and all these other people that never really do anything for us, and we don't actually get to vote on them as well. A lot of them have unlimited term limits and all this other stuff, and they're immune to some of the stuff. Like Nancy Pelosi has a 97% win rate inside the market. Nancy Pelosi is old enough to be your great grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
she's beating literally 99% of traders when it comes to making money moves in the market. Now, either Nancy is really, really, really good and very, very tech savvy, or
Or she
Nancy
has the damn information inside.
exactly. She's doing something. She just has the privilege to do something that you can't do. And so it's like, if you look at it, it's like, oh man, it's one big club and you ain't in it. Is a saying. I forgot who says it, but a guy, he always Gerald Salenti. He's not the person that came up with the saying, but he says it a lot. He's like, it's one big club and you ain't in it. And that's what it is. It's like you're either a part of this club or you're not. And I think there's a different club, and we get a lot of hate. This club is wealthier people, middle class and upper class people who are saying, "Hey, we're not like them. We actually hustled for our money. We actually started businesses. We actually created opportunities. We actually helped people, and then we got rich."
Mhm.
And then, but they can't decipher that, so they keep seeing like, "Oh, you're with them, you're with them, you're with them," and it's like, no, 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 no. We're trying to help you, and we're trying to get you to understand that you can actually join us, right?
Mhm.
You can do better for your family, whatever the case is. And the goal is not to become filthy rich. I think, in my opinion, the goal is to reach up, like we're talking about self-sufficiency. Can you
I'm
feed your family? Can you feed your family? Simple stuff. So yeah, I think it's sad because when I talk to people, especially they don't have financial education and they're lower income, they really do think that their biggest enemy is somebody that just simply has more than them.
yeah.
And it really is sad. There's a level of hatred there, and they don't understand that a lot of wealthier individuals don't like this big gap, and
Mhm.
we're not responsible for creating it. It's the currency. But if you keep making money, which is really currency, in today's time, if you keep making that your god, and you don't understand it's a tool, and you don't understand that, okay, I can have an axe or I can have a chainsaw.
Mhm.
That's all this currency is. If I make more of it, if I make it faster, I can do something quicker and more efficient. If we don't understand it and have a better mindset around it, we're always going to be separated. We're always going to be divided. But
Yeah.
what would you I'm gonna let you put a bow on it. So I don't want to hold you on too long here. I know you're a very important person, getting more important by the day. I'm happy to know you. Um,
I hate you too much.
yeah. So to bring things to a close, like what's some things that you would throw in there? I know you always give people that message. I forget exactly what you say. Everybody's in the banking business. And you have like a whole saying that goes with that. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you bring it to a kind of like a close for us. Like, what do you want to throw in there? What do you want to comment on from everything we talked about?
Yeah, I think the best quote to kind of summarize it up is that think for yourself and question. I think about that a lot, a lot, a lot. I don't just like even where I get like my money information or news information. I don't just go to one source. I look at both sides and I find my own conclusion from those both sides. And I would say don't compare yourself to others. Everybody's on their own journey, doing their own stuff, and people are just going to get there when they are ready to. I mean, I remember like seeing like a post on Facebook not too long ago where it was like, hey, some of these big billionaires, they didn't even become a CEO until they were like 67 years old. And us over here, like in the Gen Z world, we're trying to like just get there as faster and faster and faster as I can. And I'll just tell y'all from my experiences now, just having the ability to not really think about money so much, just within my own personal life. I'm not out here thinking, hey, where am I going to find my next meal? So then it really gets me into different mindsets of, okay, so now that my cup is filled up, how can I go out there and keep spreading the message and keep filling into other people's cups? And then it kind of just takes you down this whole philanthropist world and activism and different things too. Where I mean, I've gotten to the point where I have my own foundation now, and every year I will donate from my foundation to these different charities that I like and I understand and I support their message, because it's not just you. We can't have that selfish mentality, because I mean, I think that's the greatest. I know I've mentioned the word superpower already, but it is the biggest superpower that us human beings have, is the art of the connection, right? And actually, I'll even tell you, last night I really got deep into the Matrix movies again. I'm on the second movie of the
Oh
Matrix.
my God, Nate, Matrix Reloaded. That's
Yeah,
my favorite one. That's my favorite one.
I
Matrix
fell
Reloaded.
asleep to it last night though, so I'm still in the middle of that one. but
Man, the
but
Matrix
it
is great. Yeah, it's my favorite movie chronicle of all time. Yeah.
Yes. No, it's a fabulous, fabulous movie, because it just gets you into those mindsets of, okay, well, what if this really was true? Or what if we did take this slight different path and this is the reality, right? So, I think it's that we all are here, and I love that we've gotten to the point of where we're at now because of the human connections that we've made, and our minds keep developing more and more as time goes on. We keep inventing new things. I think there's nothing better than just that human brain and the ability to create. But also, we're kind of getting to that day and age where, we sometimes we can't rely just on ourselves because of how easy that we've made machines or technology, and how it has been helping support us within our life too. So it's kind of like a balance between the machine world and then the human world, that we kind of need each other to survive in a way. Actually, I'll even tell you this, Robert. I think you'll like this, because I was thinking about it one day. I think I had this thought about like 2 years ago, but I was like, you know what? We really just pay to have the convenience of things, because I could go out there, I could gather my own food, I could go hunt if I chose to, I can go get my own water source, I can build my own shelter if I so please. But the reason of where we're at today is because we pay for the convenience and the ease of our lifestyle. So I don't know. I think my biggest message that the listener should just take is that, I say just focus on you. Yes, I think it's good to be aware, because this is from Nelson Nash. If you know what's going on, you'll know what to do. So just be aware, think for yourself, and question. But I wouldn't go down and have so much anxiety about all of the other things that are going on in the world, because I can only control what I can control. And if there is support that I can do, I will contribute to some of that support and help as best as I can. But at the end of the day, this is my life. I'm writing my own story, and nobody's walking in my shoes besides myself. So I just got to keep doing what I believe is right, and what I'm passionate about. So I just appreciate you, and I appreciate our friendship. I know it's been some time now that we've known each other.
Yeah. This is crazy. I always say, like, when I do a newer podcast, whatever, I do a newer show, I always, like, depending on who it is, whatever, I'll be like, oh man, this is the best one I did. This might be the best one I did. I
Oh, I
said,
love it.
saying that, I'm saying that because, like, everything we talked about, I mean, you're dangerous. You just explained exactly what the danger to the matrix is when somebody has a singular focus, and they're focused on what's right in front of them, what impacts them, and at the same time they have an awareness of what's going on inside the world, and they want to make a change towards it. And that's why it's important to keep us divided. It's important to keep us worried, working a job or something like that, and having us focused on just trying to survive. Because if you're just trying to survive, you don't have time to care about some of the stuff that we're talking about right now.
Mhm.
And this is I mean, it's crazy the fact that you even brought the Matrix up. Like I said, that is my favorite. I mean, absolutely my favorite. The first one is the eye opener. The
Mhm.
first one is the eye opener. The second one, Matrix Reloaded, is piecing together. Okay, oh man, what if? Like,
Yeah.
really, what if, and then from there, like, I hate the way they did the newer one or whatever. Trust me, it goes downhill. So I'm just going to prepare you.
I like
It's at a high, and then you just go on down the mountain. So I'm just going to prepare you for that now. But nevertheless, if you really focus in on the messages and you focus in on some of the stuff that we're talking about, it's like, are you, don't try to, he said don't try to bend the spoon, bend your mind.
Mhm.
That was so amazing. It was
Mhm.
so amazing because and then once he tried to bend his mind, all he was saying is, don't try to change the physical or what you're seeing, change how you think about it.
Mhm.
And that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to change people. How do you think about money? How do you see this concept of whole life insurance, whatever the case is? And that's what makes people like myself and you dangerous. Hannah, I appreciate you being on. This, like I said, this is good because me and Chris Nago had a really good one just recently that he's gonna be putting out on his platform, but obviously this will be on my platform as well as your platform. This hands down is the best one. This is it. I'm seeing it right now. This is the best conversation I've had because the things we've touched on from all these different perspectives, and I know the people that hear this is going to love it. They're going to like a lot of what we're saying. Some people are going to hate what we're saying. It's always some, you got to have those people too. We love you guys too. You're necessary.
Haters need hugs too.
Yeah, but that's freedom. That's freedom. Like I think that you should have the freedom to not care or like what I'm saying, and I'm all for that. And the danger is now we have a society where it's like you're pro so and so, cancel you. You can't talk. You can't say that. Whatever, and that is very very scary. Whether you're pro Israel, pro Palestine, pro life, pro choice, whatever. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, whatever, you gotta leave a conversation out there that even during the lockdowns and stuff like that, there's people that's like, man, everybody needs to take this jab and here's how we feel about it or whatever. Then there was a group of people saying like, I don't want to do that with myself, or I don't think that way, and I don't see people lined up going to the hospital. So I think the news is telling me something that's not completely accurate. And then we saw a lot of health effects and stuff like that that came from that. So it's, and oddly enough, it's funny because we have a society of people now where when they find out they're wrong about something, they never go back and try to say, oh, you know what, we were wrong about that. But the same news media that was telling you, be afraid, do this, do that, do this, do that, they're coming out and saying, hey, well, like Anthony Fauci, is this guy got up on Capitol Hill and said, sorry, there's no science behind standing 6 feet apart. I know I told you don't go see your grandma. Well, come to find out, there's really no science behind showing, if we can't prove that these tactics and stuff like that worked. And it's scary because it just comes back to what you're saying. Think for yourself and question everything. And we are we are the we are the we are the danger to the matrix. We are the I'm trying to think, we're the neos. I forget what they were calling themselves. I know they were saying like Zion or whatever. I forget exactly what they were calling themselves though, but we are the neos, and we are the danger to the matrix. Young, sharp, it's scary. I'm telling you, you're, especially you, what you're doing is so like and it being a woman thinking the way you're thinking, that's scary. You're dangerous. You are very dangerous. You're a heck of a lot dangerous than like myself. I'm dangerous because of my demographic, my ethnic background. I'm dangerous. A young black male, educated and thinks the way I think. But you're dangerous because a lot of women just simply do not think like this at all. And you have a very balanced viewpoint of the world, and you've been heavily influenced by your dad. You had both parents. You came from a nuclear family. You are an extremely dangerous person. But guys, I appreciate you for being on. Better investment things, a better future. Oh, and what's the yours is because you changed it up. It's make your money make sense, right?
Oh, that's just my slogan. Yeah, so my podcast is called The Money Multiplier Podcast. But my slogan is just do your dollars make sense?
Do your dollars make sense? There it is. There it is. Do your dollars make sense? I'm like, I know it. So yeah, guys, make sure definitely and the links will be in the description. Hannah is great. She's pioneering the financial space for women in general, well, for people in general, but especially for young ladies. Hannah, I appreciate you being on. Guys, better investments equals a better future, and I'll see you guys inside the next video.
Bye, y'all.